In our readings, we've started to see the word who, which is actually a new type of thing, the relative pronoun, which means who or which, sometimes whom or whose, depending on what function it's fulfilling in the sentence. And while we're going to mostly see it in the nominative right now, it's going to become more complicated as we go on. And this is a word that you probably want to spend a little bit of time looking at and starting to chant. If we were in class right now, we would be doing this to the point of nausea, going qui, quai, quod, cuius, 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 cui, 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 quem, quam, quod, quo, qua, quo, qui, quai, quai, quorum, 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 quibus, 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 quos, quas, quae, quibus, quibus, quibus. So kind of like is, ea, id, you notice here that the genitive and the dative singular are a little bit funky and look the same across all genders. So you have cuius and cui, sort of like you were making strange noises as a little baby. And it looks kind of like your endings that you're used to, particularly in the plurals. And you also notice the neuter follows the same rules of nominative, accusative look the same here, where you have quod. And in the neuter plural, it looks kind of like the feminine. It doesn't quite end in a like you would expect, but it looks like the feminine singular. So that kind of works. So this thing is going to become increasingly important for us. Like I said, right now it's going to mostly be in the nominative, so you can just translate it as who, and you can focus on the qui, quai, quod and the qui, quai, quai forms of that for the readings. But it can do a little bit more, because this links two clauses together and it creates its own type of dependent clause. So remember, an independent clause is one that can stand on its own, but a dependent clause cannot. So if I say something like, the beetle who is climbing up the window is getting rather sleepy, well, who is climbing up the window can't work on its own. The beetle is getting rather sleepy can. And so that's the independent clause, and without it, the dependent clause, who is climbing up the window, just can't work. Now, what the relative does is it relates the two things together. So you have who is climbing up the window. That who is referring back to the beetle. So the thing that it links to is called the antecedent. Ante means before, and you can remember from our words like proketo, reketo, stuff like that, that this can word can mean go. So antecedent is literally the thing that goes before. So it links these two things together, and because they're talking about the same thing, they've got to match in the same gender, they've got to be the same number. That's not really going to change, but they don't always agree in case. So as we get more complicated sentences, we're going to start to see places where they're going to be different. Because in this example, where the beetle is going up the window, well, he's the subject in both. The beetle is going up the window and is getting rather tired. But in some of these others, it doesn't have to be like that. So this first one, as far as these examples down here, the squid who swam all the way from Antarctica is very tired. Well, this is kind of like our beetle example. Who swam all the way from Antarctica would be our clause, our dependent clause here, and the antecedent of who, the thing that the who is talking about, is the squid. And they would both be nominative, because the squid is tired and the squid swam all the way from Antarctica. But we could put them in the genitive case. So we could say something like, the snail whose shell you are tapping on is rather annoyed. Our relative clause here is whose shell you are tapping on. We could underline that if we want. And the whose is referring back to the snail. If this were Latin, this would be in the genitive case. So this is, the snail is rather annoyed. The snail's the subject of your main clause, but you are actually the subject here in this relative clause. It's just whose shell you are tapping on. So the relative doesn't even have to be a structural piece of its own clause. It could be the direct object too. If you have the dog whom you see in the window really wants to leave the pet store, the dog is also the subject here in the main clause, and whom you see in the window is your relative clause. So the dog is, of course, the antecedent, the thing you're talking about with whom, but here he would be in the nominative in Latin, but he would be in the accusative here because you are doing the seeing to him. You can even have a relative pop up in a prepositional phrase. So your main clause in this next one is, the lake is home to many alligators, but you could say the lake in which you are swimming. And so the relative is actually not even the first word here. If it's in a prepositional phrase, the little preposition can come before it. So the antecedent for this one would be the lake, and the which would be the relative. Then the cat to whom you gave a treat is not particularly appreciative. To whom you gave a treat, well, this would be representing the dative case in Latin, and the cat would be your antecedent again. One other thing to notice about the relative pronoun is we tend to use who for people or some animals that we regard with that little modicum of dignity, that we treat them like they're little people, or big people if it's an elephant or something. But you use which for objects. I wouldn't say the person which I saw. That would be kind of demeaning and rude, dehumanizing them. Instead, you would say the person whom I saw. And you notice in English, we have this little trace of the case use that we see in Latin, where we have that M that we see in the accusative, showing that English is actually related. So the whom is the accusative in English. But if you are talking about them in the nominative, you'd say who. The person who is walking down the street really is not aware of that oncoming trolley. So there's a little bit of case use left in English because the proper accusative, at least in the singular, would be whom. So the person whom you are pestering will someday get his revenge. You wouldn't say the person who you're pestering, though in common speaking, that's becoming a little more prevalent. So that's a quick little intro to what the relative pronoun is. We're going to practice with it a lot more, but you've now seen some examples of it, and it will be an increasing topic of discussion as we go along.